Instagram. Okay, so I'm live. So greetings everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining me on the planet. My name is June Allen. I'm a racial trauma therapist and I'm the founder of The Art of Greatness at juneallen.net. So today I want to talk to you about Peaceful Father's Day. Okay, having a peaceful Father's Day for wounded daughters. So in the UK, if you live in the UK, tomorrow is Father's Day. Okay, so for a lot of women, for a lot of people, it's not going to be a happy, joyous occasion. Okay, it's going to be quite sad for a lot of people. Sad for a lot of people. Maybe you've lost your dad. Maybe you're in a difficult relationship with your dad. Maybe you haven't spoken to your dad for years. There are so many different reasons why you might have a different relationship with your dad. So I just wanted to jump on and do today's live stream. If you haven't been following along the what I've been doing the last few days, so on the 1st of June was my business anniversary, 8 years, and on the 2nd of June was my recovery anniversary of 13 years. So what I wanted to do is to jump on and do a live stream challenge for doing 30 live streams in 30 days. So I've been hopping on. Hi everyone, thanks for joining. So I've been hopping on every day and just talking about different things that are relevant to what's going on at the moment, things that are people have asked me. I've been asking people to send me their questions, so I've been responding to different questions and just basically sharing what's on my heart. If I have an insight about something, I think somebody might need to hear it, or whatever. Just share my perspective on different things. So today's day 8, okay, and because it's Father's Day tomorrow in the UK. The last couple of days I've been, I've wanted to share. Actually, no, yesterday I didn't share on Father's Day. I shared on some insights that I had from the mastermind class that I did on the Thursday. So I shared on that. But the day before, I did share a message for wounded daughters about Father's Day. So if you have a difficult relationship with your dad, or you're dreading Father's Day, or whatever, or you have if you just have a really difficult relationship where you don't know who your dad is, or whatever, you've got a lot of pain around the relationship with your dad, you can go back and watch that one. So today is going to help you specifically around tomorrow if you're not sure how to manage it. It might be that you're numb as well around your dad, but tomorrow is going to give you, what I'm going to share today is going to help you how to manage tomorrow. So here's the concept that I really wanted to share with you about tomorrow, is that inside all of us, okay, there is an ecosystem of different parts. Okay, we all have different parts to ourselves. There's at the core of us, okay, is your sacred self. Okay, your sacred sense of self is at your core. That's the part of you that is a cup of your higher power, God, however you understand it. Okay, we all have that part, and over time, okay, there are different things that are going to disconnect us from that part of ourselves. Okay, whether it's trauma, pain, oppression, all of that stuff is going to disconnect us from that part of ourselves. All right, it's going to disconnect us from that part of ourselves. So what's important is to understand that the different parts of ourselves are going to have a different, when we talk about it within the context of Father's Day. I've just had a really strange pain underneath in my chest. I'm sorry, I've just got a, that was really hard. That was really hurt. And I don't know what that's about. So it's about remembering or considering or exploring the fact that different parts of yourself, okay, are going to have a different relationship with Father's Day. Okay, different parts of yourself are going to have a different relationship with Father's Day, and they're going to have different needs. So let me give you an example. Okay, let me talk about it from say, I'll talk about it in the context of some of the struggles that my clients have with their dads. Okay, so it might be that there's a really young part of themselves. There might be like a 9-year-old part. Okay, a 9-year-old part of the self that is wounded because the dad was there physically but wasn't there emotionally. That part still yearns for their dad to come and hold them and to tell them that they're pretty and to care for them and all of that, just to be visible. Okay, that 9-year-old so that 9-year-old part of you might still want to celebrate Father's Day. That 9-year-old part of you is still looking for validation from your dad, even though your dad's not been around. Maybe your dad's been a bit of an asshole or whatever, but that 9-year-old part of you is still looking for that part of your dad for validation. Okay. Now, another part of you might be the angry teenager that don't want nothing to do with him. That is angry because he didn't spend time with you. That is angry because you weren't visible. That's angry because it seems like he doesn't care. Okay. That part of you might not want to spend time with your dad. Okay. Because that part of you is too angry and doesn't, and it's kind of like, I'm not interested. Okay. Now let's put one more in the mix, just to kind of give you a bit more of a holistic idea of what this going, how this works. There might be an adult part of you, okay, that understands that your dad can't show up because maybe he's got his own trauma. Maybe he had difficulties in his own life, which meant he wasn't able to show up. Maybe he's not working, he doesn't have a lot of money. Maybe he don't work or whatever, and he can't, for whatever reason, he's not contributing to your well-being financially. He doesn't have a good relationship with your mom. All of this kind of stuff. Maybe at an adult level, you understand it from your adult self to his adult self, that he's also an adult. He's not just your dad. He's got his own problems and he can't show up. There might be that part of you that has even compassion for him with all of that going on. That part of you might think, okay, well, maybe I will go and hang out with him, but I'll do it with some boundaries, because I don't really want to, I don't really agree with what he's saying, of what he's done. You know, the adult part of you is trying to have a compassionate response to Father's Day. You might sort of think, okay, well, he's not showing up for me, but maybe I'll just go and spend an hour with him and make sure he's all right. You know, so the reason I say that to say this, the reason why this is important is because those different parts of you that has a different relationship with Father's Day and your dad, they've got different needs. They've clearly got different angles. Okay, but all of those parts, there's no right or wrong in any of those parts having those thoughts and feelings. They're all valid. Okay, but the difference is you have to think about what the different needs are for those different parts, number one, and then think about how you want to move forward. Okay, it might be because all of those parts are also going to interact with each other. Yeah, those parts are going to interact with each other at some level. It might be that the adult part of you, the part of you that feels compassionate towards your dad, okay, might be trying to convince the pissed off teenager in you that, okay, yes, he's not been great in showing up, but maybe we just give him half an hour, because at the end of the day, he did give you life. Maybe the adult part of you was trying to say that to that upset teenager. And maybe the adult part of you was also saying to the wounded 9-year-old that we're not just going to give over everything, okay, like he hasn't got some responsibility. We're not just going to pretend like we're not going to go into fantasy and think that, oh, yes, he's a great dad, even though he didn't show up, So the adult part of you then is having a conversation with those two parts of yourself. I know it sounds bizarre and it might sound a bit strange to do it like that, but this is a really healthy way for you to decide what's best for you. Think about what part of you, okay, which part of you is dominating the conversation. Which part of you is dominating the conversation? It might be that the adult part of you is nowhere to be seen. Okay, maybe you haven't done a lot of work around this situation, in the sense that maybe you haven't done a lot of the father wound work in therapy. It might be that you haven't done any of the father wound work in recovery. Okay, so that means if you haven't done any work, if you haven't done any healing work around your dad, then it might be that the wounded 9-year-old and the angry teenager is still running the conversation, which means you might not want to see him. Well, depending on whether it's the wounded 9-year-old or the angry teenager that's got the louder voice. Okay, if it's the angry teenager, then maybe there won't be any conversation on Father's Day. But if it's the wounded 9-year-old, hi Marie, thanks for joining. If it's the wounded 9-year-old, okay, that's showing up, that's got the loudest voice, then maybe you will go and see your dad, because the wounded 9-year-old is still looking for that validation. But you need to be careful if it's the wounded 9-year-old, because if the wounded 9-year-old goes there, okay, and it's not prepared, she's going to go there in fantasy, and she might be setting herself up for disappointment. I hope this is making any sense. Just drop some emojis and stuff in the comments if this is making any sense. I'm trying to explain it in a way that kind of makes sense, but I don't know if what I'm saying is is kind of making sense. Hi Marie. Yeah, so just drop some emojis in the comments if what I'm saying is making sense. Because the point of it is the way that you're going to have a peaceful Father's Day, okay? The way that you're going to have a peaceful Father's Day, okay, great. So it's making sense. The way that you're going to have a peaceful Father's Day is honoring the different parts of you, or having a conversation with those different parts and asking them what they want to do, because they might have different ideas about what they want to do. They might have different ideas about what you want to do, and it might be that you're just, the 9-year-old part of you is just too hurt to be in contact with him. It might be that him being invisible, him being emotionally distant, him not showing up, him not maybe he didn't help your mum financially or emotionally. Maybe he didn't support your mum. Maybe they're separated and whatever. Maybe it was violent relationship. So maybe the 9-year-old part of you is still too hurt. Maybe he was violent towards you. Maybe he was abusive towards you and you don't want to see him. But it's important for you to think about not how he's going to feel, because I hear this a lot, that people end up doing things sometimes because they're worried about what the dad is going to do. Because what happens is when the dad conversation comes up, sometimes we automatically drop ourselves into the dynamic that it was, okay, when you were growing up, the dynamic that it was when you were hurt. Okay, so if the relationship that you had with your dad was really based on when you were an angry teenager, that's the persona that's going to show up every time you're in contact with him. Because when we're hurt by our adults, sometimes we can get stunted at an age. We can get stunted at the age that we were hurt. Yeah, we can get stunted at the age when you hurt. For me, I think it's probably the angry teenager. Maybe about sort of 13, 14, when I'm just coming into my being a young lady and kind of wanting to understand and get more of an understanding around what it means to be around masculine energy and looking at what it means to be a man. But I never really saw it. I never really saw my parents interact with each other in a way that looked healthy. My mum was always upset about something. She was angry. She was very angry. But yeah, there was a lot of things that I didn't really see. I didn't really see them work as a team in many respects, and so yeah. And my dad was there physically, but he wasn't there emotionally. My dad was there physically, but he wasn't there emotionally. So there is that teenage part of me that never really felt validated, that never really felt seen by him, that never really felt understood. I felt invisible. I felt invisible. So the wound, it kind of stunts the emotional growth that needs to happen when you're growing up. If the dad is not, if you've got a wound from your dad and it was never really healed or repaired in an appropriate way, you're going to be stuck at the age where that wound took place, where that wound happened, and it's going to be hard for you. Like, even though you're an adult now, if I hadn't gone to therapy and stuff like that, I would have been stuck at that age. So therapy for me, let's talk a little bit about therapy and the father wound. So I worked with a black male therapist on purpose. I chose him specifically because I wanted to do some work around my father wound stuff. And up until this day, I'm still fond of this therapist. He's a great guy, really, really nice guy. And yeah, I was with him for 6 years, and I realized that there was I had a lot of shame. I had a lot of shame around being around black men. A lot of shame would get triggered, and it came from the dynamic that I had with my dad, from feeling invisible. I found it very difficult, very painful to be seen around black men. I found it very, very painful to be seen around black men because I was so used to being invisible. When I was seen, I would go into a lot of shame and I would feel invisible. I remember this is the first relationship that I was in, actually. This is after I came into recovery. The first relationship that I had this relationship was so beautiful. I'm not in a relationship with him now. We just had different things. But this was the first time I actually felt really, really seen in a relationship. And I would like I cried a lot in that relationship, not because I was unhappy, but because it just felt so different and so wonderful to be seen by somebody, and be seen by somebody that actually really cared about me. That's the first time I really experienced a connection with somebody else. I really felt that that person saw me, and actually, and really felt like in a relationship that somebody actually really cared about me and actually really liked me. Not just loved on me, but actually really liked me. And that makes me feel sad saying that, to grow up in a household where you don't feel, people say that they love you, but it's different when somebody actually likes who you are as a person. I never really felt like I never felt visible at home. I never felt that I was liked as a person. I never felt that who I was as a person was even allowed, let alone to be liked. That's how it felt. It might not have been their intention, but that's how it felt to me. So to actually be in a relationship with somebody and to have that person, honor me because they like me, and care for me because they liked me and loved me, was a very powerful experience for me. And I cried a lot in that relationship, and it got to the point where we would both be laughing. He'd be like, "Oh, you're not crying again." I just, but that's how it felt. It was so overwhelming for me to just be in a situation where somebody genuinely had really, genuine care for me, and that was really that felt really nice. And so now I understand what it feels like to be in a situation, to be around what love feels like, what caring for somebody feels like, which is great, but not having that, or not doing the work. I was able to work through a lot of that. And actually, when I was in this relationship with this guy, I was actually seeing this male therapist as well, and I think that he was instrumental in helping me to manage that. He was instrumental in helping me to manage that, helping me to unpack the stuff, what was going on. And it was so interesting just talking about the shame and stuff about being visible, because I remember there were times when I literally sat in the therapy chair with this therapist, and I literally told him stuff, and I would say, look, I'm gonna share some stuff with you, but I just couldn't look at him. I said, look, I'm gonna shut my eyes, because I know there's shame that's gonna come up when I tell you about this stuff, but I know that I needed to say it out loud, because I know that if I say it, the shame it will reduce the power. The shame reduction happens when you speak the truth. Okay, shame can't live where there's truth. Shame breeds when there's secrecy and hiding and denial. Okay, shame will breed where there's secrecy and denial. Okay, when there's secrecy and denial, the shame is just going to multiply. It's going to multiply, and it will have more power. And there'll be like this internal war that happens. The shame will be telling you to keep quiet, to not be visible, to hide yourself, to not take any risks. Or the shame will keep you. It's, again, in a sense, the shame, I suppose, in a way, is trying to protect me from being hurt. That's another way to look at it. Because sometimes when we talk about shame, it can trigger shame. Even talking about shame triggers shame. But you need to understand what shame is about. You need to understand how shame can, you need to understand your relationship with shame is kind of what I'm trying to say. You need to understand it. You need to understand why it's there. Okay. And you also need to understand how it shows up and why it shows up. But instead of thinking about shame as a negative thing, it's about thinking about, what is it trying to protect you from? You need to befriend it. Why is it there? What's the purpose of the shame? What does it do? Because there is such thing as healthy shame and toxic shame. Okay, shame is not like something that's all round bad. Shame is also something that protects you. It keeps you within certain boundaries, certain healthy boundaries. Like, as an example, there might be boundaries within a certain relationship around behavior, around conduct and stuff like that. That is important. There might be certain boundaries around consent as well. When it comes to shame, and you can, when that comes up, you can communicate that to the person. You can communicate what needs to happen with the person, what feels okay and what doesn't feel okay, and the other person might, when you communicate that, the other person might feel shame in what you said. That's healthy shame, because what you're doing is you're teaching the other person where your boundary is, and it's not for you to soothe the other person that might be feeling that healthy shame. they need to take that as an understanding and a message from you that actually it's not okay to touch my body, or to interact with my body in that way. Okay, that's healthy shame. Toxic shame is when, it's like a rupture of the self. Okay, toxic shame is like a rupture of the self. That's when you completely abandon yourself. That's when, that's a lot of self-loathing. That's, that's when this is when it goes internal, and you can't even allow yourself to be seen. You can't allow yourself to be visible. You can't allow yourself to be yourself. You don't feel an inherent sense of goodness about who you are. You just feel like a mistake. You just feel like a mistake. And there's a difference between making a mistake and being a mistake. But when you've got shame, you've got toxic shame, you just feel like, you just feel like you're a mistake. So, yeah, I had to work through a lot of that stuff in therapy, because I knew it was there, and I knew that I needed to be in a safe environment with a therapist that was boundaried, that I could talk to with a sense of care, who would hold me through all of that stuff with a sense of care, and be able to reflect back to me what was going on. So I was able to understand that a lot of the shame that I felt, obviously I'd internalized a lot of negative thinking about my dad's behavior. I told myself that I was a mistake because my dad was emotionally available. But now I understand that actually my dad's behavior was a result of his own childhood, his own upbringing, his own trauma, his own internalized racism, whatever, and the list goes on. But his stuff that he maybe hasn't dealt with because he didn't do any therapy or anything like that, that's not my fault. So therapy really helped me understand what belonged to me and what belonged to my dad, and that my dad's stuff it's nothing to do with me. It's part of his own history, and it's a mixture of that and also what's systemic. Living under systems of oppression, and also, like I've said in these previous live streams, coming from Jamaica, 240 years of enslavement, okay, being passed down. My great-grandmother, okay, was the daughter of a slave. I remember meeting my grandmother Sarah, actually. Gosh, it makes me feel... Ooh, I get goosebumps when I think about her. I remember remember going to Jamaica when I was 7, and she was 102, I think, when I saw her. And I remember sitting on the bed, she had quite long hair, clear skin, and I remember her little hands being really wrinkled and frail and stuff like that. But it was quite now I think about it, it's quite humbling to see someone like that. But actually, understanding that my great grandmother was the daughter of a slave, it just goes to show that people think about slavery being years and hundreds of years ago and whatever, but actually it's not. We're only talking about a few generations away. So when we think about it within that context, it makes sense why, the relationship that we have with our dads, or any challenging relationships that we have with our dads, is still going to be impacted by what happened on the plantations. Okay, and if we think about what happened on the plantations, I did a masterclass on a lot of this with my in my mastermind group last year. I did a series of masterclasses on healing the black father wound, and I did talk about life, what it meant for black men on the plantation. They could have been sold off at any point. There was a lot of sexual abuse as well. A lot of black men experienced a lot of sexual abuse. I'm not going to go into details, obviously, because I don't want to trigger anyone, but that's the facts. They were emasculated through sexual abuse and stuff like that. And, there's a lot of stuff that went on. There's a lot of stuff that went on. And so again, it's that thing of understanding, and this is not making excuses for people's behavior today. It's not making an excuse, but it's understanding the context. Because at the end of the day, like I keep harping on in these live streams, this is why we need to do our own personal work. Okay? We need to do our own personal work, because we need to understand how our history of enslavement, what happened in our family of origin, what goes on in our community, all of that sort of stuff, how the impact of racism is impacting you now, how it's going on currently, okay, how that's impacted you on a personal level. Yeah, how that has impacted you on a personal level, and what you need to do about it to kind of rebuild your own sense of self, so that you can have better relationships, so that you can have a better relationship with yourself. And the relationship that you have with your dad is not immune to all of that. The relationship that you have with your dad is not immune to all of that. So you need to really think about, again, and this is something, just going back to what I was saying at the top of the hour with the stuff that I was talking about, the different parts and stuff like that. It's also about thinking about the part of you, okay? And there is going to be a part of, in all of us as black people, that identify with the oppressor. Okay, there is going to be a part of us that identifies with the oppressor, because when you live under the system and with our history of enslavement, there is going to be a part of us that identifies with the oppressor. You're going to internalize racism at some level. That's part of the work, is decolonizing your thinking. But also think about the part of you that identifies with the oppressor, your internalized racist. How does that part think about the relationship that you have with your dad? What stereotypes have you absorbed about black men that end up getting projected onto your dad? Yeah, how does that all work? Oh, is the conversation, well, all black men are this or all black men are that, and how does that show up for you? How does it get acted out for you? How does it play out? Because all of that stuff is going to be really, really important in terms of your healing as well. And this is one of the reasons why I actually wanted to work with the black male therapist, because I wanted to then begin to understand my own internalized racism around black men. I needed to understand how that showed up. And there was a part of me that obviously found it difficult to connect with black men because of my own history with my dad and all of that. And, being in relationships with black men as well that were abusive and all of that sort of stuff, what it does is it feeds my internalized racist loves all that, loves that conversation. Yeah, see, black men can't be trusted. Yeah, black men are this and black men are that. My internalized racist loves that conversation. Because then I'm doing the work internally. I'm doing the work of white supremacy. Now, if that's going on in my head without me having an awareness of that, that's going to get acted out. That is going to get acted out. Okay, but when you have an awareness of that stuff, how that's going on and how that gets played out, and the narrative that's playing out in my head, the inner critic that identifies with the oppressor, then I can have a dialogue with that part of myself and know I can name it for exactly what it is. The internalized racist part of me believes X, Y, and Z, but the adult part of me understands that that's what it is, and I don't have to act out on it. Therefore, it's going to have a different, it's going to show up differently in my relationships, because I know what's going on, rather than it going on in my subconscious, okay, and then it being acted out willy-nilly without realizing it. When I was younger, I was one of those girls that I never dated black men at all. I didn't date black men at all. I found myself just dating white men, and at the time, I didn't know why. It's only when I dated the first black guy that I recognized the reason why I avoided black men is because I didn't want to be confronted with the pain that I had about my dad. Yeah, I didn't want to date black men at the time because I didn't want to be confronted. I didn't want to be confronted by the pain that I had around my dad. Okay, so and I had to learn that, and it's only when going through therapy and stuff like that that I was able to unpack a lot of that stuff, and I really began to understand. Wow. There's the internalized racist there telling me all of this stuff about black men, and I was acting it out unconsciously. But at the same time, yes, there's the inner racist, but I also understand that part of me was also trying to protect me from the pain. Okay, that part of me is also that part also has another arm that's trying to protect me from the pain of the blanket message that I'd put out about black men being this, and black men just hurt you, and black men just abuse you, and all that sort of stuff. So again, this is all comes down to understanding and being self-aware, understanding the different parts of you, understanding the different parts the different parts have different needs, and how do you meet those needs? What are those needs first and foremost, and how do you meet those different needs? And you can, once you start to have that conversation with yourself, you can think about it for Father's Day tomorrow. What do you want to do tomorrow, based on all of the different parts that have different relationships with Father's Day, and how that's going to be played out. How do you want it to be played out? So an example of that, I'll give you an example of as to what I do on Father's Day, because obviously I have, like I just explained before, I have all these different parts that have different relationship. So it might be that I might do some meditation in the morning. I might do I'll do some journaling. The younger part of me, the wounded part of me that's still yearning for my dad, still yearning for his validation, even though he's passed, it might be that younger part of me will do some journaling. Okay, I might allow that younger part of me to do some grieving. Maybe I'll allow myself to cry and just feel sad. Just give myself permission to feel sad about the fact that my dad's not here anymore, and that I, give myself permission to feel sad about it. And then it's part of that. The next part of the journaling phase, it might be that my angry teenager might want to cuss him out. So I might give my angry 15-year-old, a few sentences to cuss out whatever she needs to say. I know this is going to sound really bizarre to a lot of people, but this is how you start to make sense of the ecosystem of different parts that you have of yourself. There isn't just one part of you. There's a little ecosystem inside of you of all of these different parts, and they're all valid. So yeah, there might be that part of you again, that the inner teenager that might wants to cuss out your dad. So maybe do some journal writing, and then the adult part of me, might want to connect with a safe family member. Might want to connect with a safe family member. It might be that I don't want to connect with all of my family, because I don't have a healthy relationship with all my family members. So it might be that in order to keep myself safe, emotionally safe, that I don't connect with them. I just connect with the ones that are safe, or not, depending on how I feel tomorrow. But once you start to understand, and you start to understand the different parts of you and the complexities of these things, you can start to make different decisions. I'm also a parent as well. So not only do I have to think about the different parts of me, but I also have to think about, okay, well, how is this going to impact my child? How is this going to impact my child? Because my relationship with my dad was painful, but that's also my daughter's granddad as well. So it's about thinking about those things, and also giving my daughter a space to share about how she feels about the fact that she didn't really have a relationship with her granddad. Because it's these conversations are really hard. These conversations are really hard. And, I'm of the school of thought that, and this is something that's probably going to piss some people off, all right, but this is my truth, that if you are one of those grandparents that was neglectful, that was abusive, that's trying to justify everything, that don't think you should say anything, that think you think because you're older that you don't have to take any response. If you're one of those grandparents, you don't get automatic access to your grandchildren. Point blank, period. You don't get access to your grandchildren. If you think it's okay to be abusive to your child, why would you think that you should automatically have access to your grandchildren? As far as I'm concerned, if you're a parent, it's your responsibility to care for your child. It's your responsibility to care for your child. And if your parents, okay, are unsafe, why do you think they're going to behave differently to your children? Sometimes they might not be as harsh with your grandchildren, but if they're still not taking responsibility for how they treated you, and you still find it painful to be in their presence, but yet they're trying to get you to have if they're trying to get you to let them have a relationship with your child, then that's just prolonging the suffering. That's increasing the suffering. So that's something else for you to think about. And this just adds to the complexities of all of this stuff. But I made a decision very early on that if I don't feel safe, if I don't feel emotionally safe or physically safe with certain family members, you don't get access to my child either. That's it. Because if I allow access, then what I'm really saying to my child is that it's okay for other family members to treat me like shit, and I'm still going to think it's okay. It's okay for family members to treat me like shit. That's the message that you're telling your child, that it's okay for that. Even if the child doesn't actually physically see it, because quite often family members are not going to treat you they might not always treat you badly in front of the child, in front of the grandchild, if that makes sense. And you have to make these decisions. You have to be willing to make these decisions for you. And this is why, again, why therapy and being in recovery and having safe family of choice, this is why all of this stuff is important, because there are so many complexities around these conversations. There are so many complexities around these conversations. And if you're not careful, you can allow your head to be twisted up in so many different ways. And you're the one that ends up feeling bad, because you have to make a lot of these decisions on their own, because quite often the family will all, especially if they're not doing this work, they'll rally around together and make you look like you're the one that's crazy. They'll rally around and make you feel like you're the one that's crazy. You're making things difficult. Why you always have to do that? Why are you doing this, that, and the other? Why can't you forgive? Why don't you do? And there'll be all this there'll be gaslighting, and then the flying monkeys come in and, oh, you upset this person, and why you do? It's just a lot of drama and chaos. It's a lot of drama and chaos. And what needs to happen is that you need to stay firmly grounded. Okay? You need to stay firmly grounded in how you feel about the situation. Because what quite often happens is the other family members will try and tug on the heartstrings of the younger part of you. That younger part of you that wants to belong, that younger part of you that wants to create a fantasy of how Father's Day or whatever should look, or any family occasion. They're going to tug on that younger part. That younger part of you will want to go. There might be a part of you that wants to go. Oh, I don't want to be the only one who doesn't go. Oh, I'm feeling really, really bad. I'm the only person who didn't send a card on Father's Day or whatever, and I'm feeling really. And they'll guilt trip you. They'll guilt trip you and make you feel like a piece of shit because you're standing up for yourself. But here's the thing: when you start doing this work, you need to get used to it. You need to get used to that other people are going to feel uncomfortable with your choices. Because like I said in the live stream yesterday, okay, was it yesterday or the day before? I can't remember which one it is now, but you are going to get afterburn. When you make difficult decisions about your well-being and being around certain family members that are unhealthy for you, okay, you are going to get afterburn. And afterburn is when you set a boundary, you make a decision about something, you're going to get backlash from family members. You're going to get backlash from people that don't want you to behave that way. They want you to go back into the role that you were assigned, which is the scapegoat or the whatever it is. They want you to go back into that role because it makes them feel comfortable. Yeah? It makes them feel comfortable. But when you're doing this work, you have to make the decision about what's best for you and what's best for your inner child. Yeah? When you're thinking about what you're going to do for Father's Day, you need to make the decision. Hiya, thanks for joining. Hi, Beverly. You need to make the decision and think about what is going to be right for you on Father's Day and what is going to be right for your inner child. You need to take your inner child by the hand, okay? You need to take your inner child by the hand and say, come and sit down here, darling. Come on. Let's me and you do something. The inner part of you, your inner mother, okay? All of us have an inner loving parent that we have to ignite. We have to nurture that part of ourselves. Again, this is what happens in therapy. This is how I work with my clients. You need to nurture that part of yourself, that inner adult, that inner mother, so that she can get the wounded parts of yourself and go, come and sit down this side. You have to be willing to talk to that part of yourself that is suffering and yearning and crying out for mummy and daddy to come and love them. Even though it's been proven over and over again that the parent is not available for that, for whatever reason. Either they don't want to, or they can't, or whatever the reason. It doesn't really matter the reason. The fact is they're not there and they can't do it. For whatever reason, it's not going to happen. So in order to soothe the suffering, your inner mother has to take your inner child's hand or angry teenager's hand and take them over to the other side and say, come on, what do you want to do instead? And find yourself in a space. Make sure you make sure you set up, maybe you need an extra session with your therapist next week. Maybe you need an extra session with your therapist next week so that you can talk about Father's Day. Find yourself in some recovery meetings. That's what I'll be doing as well. I'll be going into some recovery. I've been in recovery meetings today. Just processing how I'm feeling. Talking about how I'm feeling. Because if I'm not talking about it, okay, it's going to be ruminating in my head, and maybe I'm making up stories about this and that, and there's all these different parts of myself, whether it's the wounded toddler or the angry teenager or whatever. There's going to be all of this stuff going on inside, and it's painful. It's going to create more suffering. So the way that I look after myself, whether it's Father's Day, whether it's a birthday, any anniversary, I find myself in a recovery meeting, or I make sure that I've got a session with my therapist that week. So that I can talk. I make sure I pencil in. I must talk to my therapist about Father's Day this week, or I phone my therapist friends, or a journal, or whatever. All of the stuff that I've talked about in this session. That's how you begin to take care of yourself. And it's only really when you start to explore what's happening for you, explore how you're feeling, that you can make a decision about what you want to do. When you don't really check in with yourself and ask yourself, how am I really feeling about this? The more chances are you're going to get dragged into doing something what other people want you to do. You get dragged into other people's expectations, which ain't got nothing to do with you. It's to make them feel more comfortable. When you start to do this work, it gives you an opportunity not only to nurture your inner mother. It's like a process of growing up. It's a process of growing up and understanding that there is an adult part of you. There's a loving mother and a loving father. A loving father that will set the boundaries and say no. And there'll be a loving mother, that's got more nurturing energy that will go, come on, let's go and do something nurturing. Let's go and have a hug. Let's go and get a hug from someone. Let's go and find a meeting that's going to be able to hear you and see you. Because what we're not going to do is sit in the corner and beat yourself up and say that no one loves me because my dad didn't love me. Because that's not true. Your dad didn't love you because he couldn't. Your dad didn't love you because he's got his own traumas. Your dad wasn't available because he's got other stuff going on. Maybe he's a drinker, or he's a druggie, or whatever. He's got his own stuff going on that ain't got nothing to do with you. But you need to make sure your inner child understands that. Yeah, your inner child needs to understand that, and you need to take the actions on Father's Day that are going to nurture your inner child, and not allow your inner child just to beat up on itself. Yeah. So Beverly's saying, I will be journaling and taking my inner child out in nature for a walk, for a bit of meditation. Perfect. When you think about it in that way, even me saying that stuff out loud, what I just said to you, my inner child feels soothed. Yeah, my inner child feels soothed, and it feels calm because I'm not ignoring it. I'm in the past. What I used to do on these days is just trying to ignore it. If I don't think about it, if I don't talk about it, if I stay off social media and just keep myself busy, I know I'm going to be in pain for the week. Because it's like carrying a pressure cooker around with all the steam and all the feelings and stuff inside. If I don't actually do this work, I start walking around with a pressure cooker on my back, and it's going to be a painful week if I don't do this work. But if I allow myself to listen to the different parts of myself, if I allow myself to speak, if I allow the different parts to speak and say what their needs are, and I come to a compromise and plan out the day based on how I can soothe those different parts. I hope that makes sense to everyone, but that's how you create peace on Father's Day. For me, that's what I do, and that's what I advise my clients to do. Peace on Father's Day is about taking care of yourself and focusing on what your needs are. Okay, especially if you're if your dad's estranged or he's behaved in a way that's inappropriate and all the rest of it. You need to really, really think about that. You need to really, really think about that. And look after yourself. Find some things that they're going to be really nurturing for you. Take yourself out for a nice meal. Make sure be around people that care. And this is one last thing that I'm going to share with you. Do not be around people that are going to judge you. Do not be around people that are going to say, "Oh, but you've only got one dad. Why don't you just text it?" Don't be around those people. Okay? Don't be around those people, because those people, like I said in a couple of live streams back, if that person has not experienced what it means to be estranged or have a difficult relationship with a parent, those people need to close their gums, because they don't know what it's like. Okay? They can't empathize, they don't understand, and if they're going to shame you or guilt trip you, do not be around those people. Okay? So Beverly's also saying it's taken me a long time to give myself permission to do this. Absolutely. Absolutely. Do not be around those people. Be around people that are going to appreciate you, that are going to honor you, that are going to be, okay, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. Non-judgmental. They're not going to shame you into any of that shit. Oh, life's too short. I tell you what, life is too short. Yes, life is too short for other people's bullshit as well. When people tell you life's too short, you need to forgive and all the rest of it. Life is also too short to be around people that are not taking responsibility for themselves. Life is also too short to be around people's bullshit, so you can flip it back on them. That's what I always say to people when they start going on about life is too short. Life is also too short for people's bullshit. Yeah? So be selfish. And I didn't even like that word, actually. Be self-full. Okay? Look after your inner child. Look after your inner teenager. And allow yourself just to enjoy Father's Day tomorrow as a day for you. Use it as an opportunity to tap in with and be honest with yourself about the relationship that you have with your dad. That's what I do now. I use it as a benchmark. Even though my dad's passed, tap in with myself and explore, okay, how do I feel about it? Do I still feel really pissed off and angry? Do I feel sad? And how's my inner child? I ask myself all of those questions. How is the relationship that I have with my dad? How is that impacting my relationship with black men? Is my inner inner racist still, being really negative about black men? How is that? I can use that as an opportunity to check in with your relationship with black men, your relationship with masculinity, all of that sort of stuff, and use that as a way to kind of to just put a pin in where you are in terms of your healing process. And if you're still in pain about a lot of stuff, that's no shade. It just means that you need more support. It's no shade. It just means that you need more support. Yeah? And you can get support for that. One thing I forgot to say actually at the beginning, I haven't really said it in this live stream. I've got a workshop. I've got a half-day retreat, actually. It's not just a workshop. It's a half-day retreat, 2 workshops, and it's called The Art of Receiving. I'm going to be doing on the 15th of July. Okay, Saturday the 15th of July. If you click the link in my bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. You can join me for that. And then the Art of Receiving half-day retreat, it's going to be 2 workshops. The first one is going to be about we're going to be unpacking what receiving means, what is receiving energy, what are the blocks to receiving, all of that kind of stuff. We'll be doing some exercises and stuff around so you can start to unpack your own story around your relationship to receiving. And then the second workshop is going to be more specific to money. Okay, it's going to be specific to money. So we'll be looking at your relationship to money. Money. We're talking about, how to define money trauma. What does that look like? And we'll be talking about it within the context of race and colonialism and all of that sort of stuff, enslavement and all of that. So if you're interested in joining me for that, you can click the link in my bio and join us on the 15th of July for that. If you're looking for something that's a bit more personal, okay, more private one-on-one time, I have got some spaces available for that as well. Again, you can click the link in my bio, and you can send me a DM, or send me an email, info@yardofgreatness.com, and yeah, we can chat about how best to support you. There's a few things that I offer, so it's always best for us to maybe have a conversation about what your needs are, and how I can support you with different things. So for those of you that are, that do have a difficult relationship with your dad and kind of dreading tomorrow, I hope that what I've shared with you today is helpful. If you know somebody that has a difficult relationship with their dad that needs support, that needs support around how to manage Father's Day and how to look after themselves and all of that, tag them, share this with them. Okay. If there's any questions that you have about anything that I've shared today, you can either comment below. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can send me a direct message, or you can email me info@yardofgreatness.com. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon or this evening in the UK. Tomorrow is actual Father's Day, so I'll probably be doing. I'm going to probably talk about black men in therapy. I think I did say I was going to talk about that, so I'm going to be more specific and talk about black men in therapy. If you're a father, okay, here's what I'm going to talk about. If you're a dad or if you're a black man and you feel like you need support in therapy, I'll do one tomorrow on the benefits of working with me in therapy as a black woman, how that can help you. Okay, I'll talk about my experience of working with black men in therapy, and how how I work with black men in therapy. So if you need support, you got some stuff that you want to work through. Maybe maybe you had a difficult relationship with your mom and you want to unpack that stuff. Tomorrow I'll share on how we can work through that. Okay, so if you know any black men, or you've got any brothers or whatever that you think need therapy, or that they might find it helpful, then let them know that I'll be talking about this tomorrow. All right, so have a good, amazing weekend, and I will see you tomorrow. All right, take care. Bye.